Apologize, I cut that last video a little bit short here, but when you take your numbers and we actually did add them together here, we did end up with 62% is 158.1 would be your final answer once you added those three numbers together. For the rest of this video, what we're going to have is one more example and then two problems for you to do on your own to kind of see how you are doing with this. And again, always remember, if you've got questions during this process, please make sure that you stop, raise your hand, and ask, because that's what I'm here for. These videos are nice, but I'm here to help where I can. This is going to be an example of how you can use this method to find out items that are over 100%. So for instance, 180% of 5. So we're saying 5 is 100%. What would 180% of 5 be? And over here, this is 9 out of 5, excuse me. So here we're saying this 5 is 100%. So, this situation isn't going to come up too much, but, sometimes different classes offer extra credit opportunities. Maybe you have a test that has an extra credit opportunity. There's 5 points possible, but you get 9. Clearly, you're going to get more than 100% because you got more correct than were possible on the actual test or quiz. So I'll show you how this works. So basically we're going to start off with 5 is 100%, and we're trying to figure out, well, what number is going to be 180%? Well, this one, we've already got 100%, so we just basically need to figure out what the 80% is and then put the 100 with the 80% to see what our final number would be. So to get 80%, again, you can be super flexible with this. You can divide by whatever you want to divide by, as long as you divide both numbers by the same thing. You can multiply both numbers by the same thing. I think I'm going to start off by dividing by 5, which is going to get me what 20% is. So I'll divide this by 5, and I end up with 1. So we're saying every 20% is equal to 1. So let's kind of set this up here. If we already know that 5 is 100%, and 20% is 1, and again we're trying to get to 180. So far we're at 120, so that would be 140, 160, 180. So there's our 180%, which is what we want. And now this would be each one of these 20% is 1, which we figured out. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 is 180%. And you should be able to estimate at the start here that if this question asks for 200% of 5, well, 100% is 5, 200% would be 10. So we would expect our answer to be pretty close to 10, and it is. It's 9. Over here, same kind of deal. We know that 5 is 100%. We're trying to figure out what 9 is. And kind of in that example, if I doubled it and went 10, so like times 2, 200% is 10, which is too much. We're looking for 9, so we don't want that. That'd be too much, but it's a good ballpark. So I think what we'll do is, I need to figure out how to get up to 9 in this column here. So really, you don't have too many choices if you're going to divide into 5. So obviously, I'll probably just start with dividing by 5 and dividing by 5, and we end up with the same thing we had on the other side. Every 1 is 20%. So now we're just trying to get to 9. So what I would do maybe on this one is, again, you can be pretty flexible. You could start with the 5 as 100% and go from there, but I know that I need 9. So I have 1 so far. I could just do times 9, gets me 9. That gets me the number I want here. And then to figure out what percentage that would be, I could just multiply it by 9 also. That would be 180%. So I know that 9 is a score of 9 would be 180%. And again, there's so many ways to do this. You don't have to divide by 5. You could have divided this one by 20. You could have divided it by 10. You could have divided it by 100. You're just going to get different percent numbers that you'll have to find a combination that equals what you're looking for here. But be very flexible with this. These last two problems, what I'm looking for is you trying these on your own and seeing how you do. These are going to be typical of some of these percent of number problems and what percent is this out of this type problems that we're going to be doing. And we'll need this information to get into the actual percent type problems what we'll be doing, where you'll have some kind of a context to them. So here's the first one I'd like you to do. I want you to pause this video and I want to see if you can come up with this answer. And once you have it, start the video again and kind of check and see how you did. Now, my explanation here, my numbers I use, may be different than yours because you may have decided to do something a little bit different, but still should be about the same thing as far as, or it will be the same answer, but it just might be a different process. So please pause this video, try this problem out, then come back to it and see how you did. All right, let's check in and see what you came up with here. So first of all, 28 is 100%. That's the whole thing. So we're trying to figure out what's 28% of 28. So it's a small 28% is not very much. So it's a small portion of 28. So if I had to do an estimate, which I recommend you do before all of these, just to see if your answer makes some sense, I would say 28% of 28, which isn't going to be a very big number. 28% is about a 33%, which is a third. How about maybe 9, somewhere around there? Let's check out what it really is. All right, so I know that the number 28 is 100%. Now I'm trying to figure out, well, what's 28% over here? I'm looking for this in the percent column. So I think what I'll do is, I think it might be easiest here to maybe make 1%. So I'll do that. Now, to get this to be 1%, you just have to think, well, what do I divide 100% by to get 1%? I'll divide it by 100. Now we got 1%. So if I divide this by 100, now we'll be working with decimals for sure, that divided by 100 is going to be 28 hundredths. And again, it's just decimal point was here, divided by 100, it's 2 spots, so it's going to be 0.28. So now, I have 1%, I need to get 28%. Pretty simple. 1 times 28, 1% times 28 is going to be 28%. So now I just need to multiply this by 28 as well. So I'm just going to use my calculator here and do 0.28 times 28, because I multiplied these both by the same thing, both by 28, and I end up with 7.84. So that would be my final answer. We're saying that 28% of this is 7.84, which, if you think about my estimate, wasn't too far off. I said about 9, and that's pretty close to 9. So if I would have got something like, I don't know, 20 here, I would have probably had to go back and say, well, that's probably not right. That's not close to my estimate. Let me go back and check my work and make sure it's right. Now, again, remember, this is going to be the answer you're going to come up with if you're right, but you may have done it a different way. Maybe you started off by dividing by 5 instead. Maybe you started off dividing by 20 instead. Lots of ways to do it, but that's going to be your answer to this problem. We're going to go on to the last example. 22 out of 40. Okay, 22 out of 40 is what we're working with here. So I want you, again, give this video a pause, try this question out. Again, we're trying to figure out 22 out of 40 is what percentage is what we're looking for. Give it a try, come back, see how you did. All right, R40 is the whole thing. That's 100%. So 40 is 100%. We want to know, well, what's 22? So we got some work to do here. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. Remember, you can divide by about whatever you want to. It's just what you want to end up working. I mean, if I divided this by like 32, it's not going to come out whole. It's going to have a decimal, which is fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. Some of them you have to. This one you don't. I'm going to actually start by dividing by 50 here. 100 divided by 50 is 2%. If I divide this by 50, 40 divided by 50, I think it's going to be 0.8. And it is. So we know that every 2% is 0.8. So I need to figure out, well, I got to get to 22. Okay? So we could just keep this going here. Okay? Another 0.8 and another 2%. That's going to come out to be 1.6 equals 4%. We could just keep following this pattern if we wanted to here. Another 1.8, sorry, another 0.8, excuse me, equals 2%. Let's add that on. Now I have 6% is whatever this is when you add it up, and that would be 2.4. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. You could keep following that pattern if you want to. If you ended up with this, I guess what I would probably do is I would come back here and I would say, well, how many 0.8s actually go into 22? So let's do that. So if I do 22 divided by 8/10 or 0.8, 27.5. So this goes in 27.5 times. So basically what we're saying is 0.8 times 27.5 is 22. Because that's what we want, is 22. So now we'd have to do the same thing on the other side. And remember, it was 2% is 0.8. So we'll times this by 27.5. And if I do 2 times 27.5, I get 55%. So we're saying the number 22 is 55% in this problem. So if you got 22 out of 40 on a test, you got 55%, not great. If you're shooting free throws, 22 out of 40, you shot 55%. Lots of ways you could do this problem, but you should have came up with 55% for an answer. Now let me show you one more way to do this just to see if this is maybe how you did it. But again, you can be flexible, so there's a lot of ways to take care of this. So if we start again with 40 is 100%, you could have done a lot of things. You could have, let's say, divided by 2. That's 50%. Divide this by 2. That's 20. So we know that every 20 is 50%. Well, we're real close to 20 already, so we know it's a little bit more than 50%. So let's try to figure out what 2 equals. And again, we did that over here. We said that every, we found out what 2% equals. We need to figure out what 2 equals here because we have to get up to 22. So let's do that. What do I divide 20 by to get 2? We're going to divide it by 10. So if I divide this by 10, 2 is going to equal whatever 50 divided by 10 is, and it's going to be 5%. So every 2 is 5%. So now we just put these two things together. We know that 20 is 50%. We know that 2 is 5%. 50% plus 5% is 55%. 20 plus 2 is 22. 22 is 55%. Tons of ways to do this, just be pretty flexible with it. And again, if you have questions with this as you're working, make sure that you let me know.